Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are gathered today on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and we are honored to live, work, and play on this land. We are here today to talk about the province that the generations to come will inherit. As many of you will know, the past 5 years have been incredibly challenging. A global pandemic, the highest inflation in a generation, and now stagnating economic growth. In fact, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade's Benchmarking Greater Vancouver report found that when compared to a group of 20 peer cities, Vancouver's prosperity ranking was a lowly 14 out of 20. The report showed that we've been unable to translate our highly skilled workforce and world-class post-secondary institutions into higher incomes, meaning we have fewer high-paid jobs and fewer high-performing companies. And our productivity is in the bottom half of more than 100 global regions. These are concerning numbers. Economic growth is not just a static number on a chart. It is a snapshot into the lives of everyday people, their efforts, abilities, and dreams of giving their children a better life than their own. That is why today BC's business community has come together, standing together to call on the province's political leaders to deliver a clear and actionable plan that fosters economic growth, increases prosperity, and ignites innovation. To solve affordability, we need a strong economy. In the coming weeks, British Columbians will decide which political party forms government. We are willing to work collaboratively with whomever forms government to build a more prosperous British Columbia. Each party has been given a number of questions focused on the economy. We hope their answers will convey a serious vision for economic growth, affordability, and prosperity. I'd now like to invite Jairo Younes, the Director of BC and Western Economic Policy for CFIB, for some remarks.
Thank you, Bridget. British Columbia's provincial election is just around the corner, but 41% of small business owners have not yet decided who to vote for. And who can blame them? Small businesses are feeling left behind, with 7 out of 10 saying their concerns won't even be heard in this election. These numbers reflect a crisis of confidence in our political leaders, as many are left questioning whether any party truly has an economic vision that speaks to them. Small business owners aren't just undecided, they're losing faith. Small business confidence in the provincial economy is now below its historic average, according to CFIB's Business Barometer. Many small business owners are delaying retirement, and a growing number believe the opportunities for new entrepreneurs are shrinking. In fact, almost 2 out of 3 small businesses in BC would not advise someone to start a business right now. This widespread pessimism is making its way to the ballot box and highlights the urgent need for policies that can restore confidence and create a more attractive investment environment. This growing unease is shared across industries, as you can see. Whether it's family-owned restaurants, natural resource companies, or tech startups, the rising cost of doing business in BC is the single largest economic challenge transcending industry lines, which is why our next provincial government must address this pressing issue. CFIB research shows that 78% of BC small businesses feel burdened by taxes and regulations, which are stifling their growth and limiting their ability to create well-paying jobs. These small businesses form the backbone of our communities, yet they're facing unprecedented challenges and many pressures. The message is simple. This election is not just about choosing a government. It's about shaping the future of our economy, restoring confidence, and ensuring that all businesses have the opportunity to thrive and contribute to a prosperous British Columbia. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Michael Goering from the Mining Association.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Michael Goring. I'm the President and CEO of the Mining Association of British Columbia. With the provincial election around the corner, I'm pleased to join my colleagues here to call on BC's political leaders to provide British Columbians with a plan to grow our economy and build our prosperity. The mining sector is vital to British Columbia. It provides well-paying, family-supporting jobs and is a cornerstone of community development. and it must factor into any vision for BC's economic future. In fact, BC has an extraordinary opportunity at hand, an abundance of critical minerals. These minerals, including copper, nickel, and cobalt, are vital to clean technologies and climate action, as well as meeting Canada's technology and national security objectives. Presently, there's 17 world-leading critical mineral projects proposed in BC. Their construction will deliver real and lasting jobs for BC's workers, stability for resource communities, service and supply opportunities in urban centres, economic reconciliation with First Nations, and prosperity for the entire province. That includes $36 billion in near-term investment, 302,000 person years of direct employment, and $11 billion in tax revenues during their construction phase alone. The long-term economic impact of operating these mines over several decades could be nearly $800 billion. However, to realize this generational opportunity, we must speed up how we permit and approve mining projects as per questions 5 and 6 in our questionnaire. It currently takes up to 12 to 15 years to permit and approve a mine in British Columbia. It took only 8 years to put a person on the moon. We must act quickly to remain competitive in the global race for critical minerals. We need to reduce mine permitting timelines from 12 to 15 years to about 7 years. The longer it takes to review and approve projects, the more likely it is that investment will go to other regions, and taking with it all the economic and community benefits. We're at a crossroads in British Columbia, and we must adopt a more streamlined, efficient regulatory and permitting process for mining projects and all natural resource projects, while maintaining BC's rigorous environmental standards. We have a unique opportunity to deliver a critical minerals windfall, attract private sector investment, and secure jobs and economic benefits for decades. But this can only happen if we speed up mine permitting and approvals. Each permit for a mine is a permit to prosperity. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Linda Cody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Cody, and I'm President and CEO of the Council of Forest Industries of British Columbia. I think you all know that forestry has been a big part of British Columbians' history. And as a renewable industry that can produce low-carbon, engineered wood products for homes and buildings, and that can use waste to make biodegradable products for everyday life, including energy, it should have a big role to play in British Columbia's future. But to do that, the forest sector in BC needs an economic strategy. It needs a strategy that can navigate current challenges, market downturns, increasing U.S. tariffs, and ongoing and overlapping policy changes here in British Columbia that are all behind the increasing number of mill closures and job losses in our sector, and a corresponding decline in government revenues and provincial exports. To stop the erosion of the core infrastructure and workforce that the BC forest sector needs to remain cost-efficient, innovative, and responsive to new market conditions, the next government of British Columbia needs to take immediate action to, 1, ensure a predictable supply of economic fiber is available to primary and value-added manufacturers, 2, make meaningful forest revenue sharing and other agreements to advance economic reconciliation with First Nations a top priority, and 3, accelerate the deployment of new forest practices and land use planning that can reduce the risk of wildfires, conserve biodiversity, and make more efficient use of damaged wood and debris. Next, I would like to call on Laura Jones, President and CEO of the BC Business Council, to speak.
Our message to all political leaders is clear. The economy needs to be job one. A strong economy is the foundation for strong communities. Growing economies support high-paying jobs, they allow neighborhood restaurants and retailers to thrive, and give us resources to invest in healthcare, education, and cleaner technology. Strong economies provide our children with the choice to stay in British Columbia, to start their careers and families here at home. Strong economies create hope for a better tomorrow. Unfortunately, that hope is fading. While we might not be in a technical recession, many British Columbians are facing what feels like a personal recession. I think we all know at least one person who feels like the prospect of building a good life in British Columbia is slipping away. We hear this in conversations with neighbors, with colleagues and loved ones, and it's confirmed in the record number of people now moving to other provinces, taking with them their experience and their potential. At the same time, we're facing record-breaking deficits, 5 years of stagnant private sector job growth, and government forecasts showing no improvement in per capita incomes until 2028. These are clear symptoms of deeper problems, problems that we ignore at our peril. That said, there are some bright spots. We're fortunate to live in a province with a diverse economy where certain sectors and projects are thriving. More importantly, we have the people, the talent, the resources, and the determination to turn things around. But as mega projects that have boosted the economy come to an end, the overall outlook for the province needs attention. I think we can all agree that strong economies offer hope and opportunity. Weak economies, on the other hand, lead to difficult choices and unpleasant trade-offs for governments, businesses, and households alike. That's why I'm really pleased to be standing here together with our colleagues from other business associations, calling on all political leaders to fill out our leadership survey and share their plans for addressing these challenges. We believe that with the right focus, we can restore hope and ensure a brighter future for British Columbians. It's now my pleasure to call Chris Gardner, the president of the Independent Contractors and Business Association.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris Gardner, President of the Independent Contractors of British Columbia, otherwise known as ICBA. Since we were founded in British Columbia 49 years ago, we've grown to become the largest construction association in Canada with over 4,000 members and clients. One of the most important issues facing British Columbians and impacting affordability, our quality of life, and our economy is our failure to replace our aging infrastructure and to build the new infrastructure our communities so desperately need. As a result, when we do decide to make the decision, what's happening is the costs are coming in wildly over budget and the projects are years delayed. In short, we're paying we're paying less and we're getting little, and it's being delivered far too late. Look no further than the Massey Tunnel, a decade behind schedule at double the budget. The Cowichan Hospital, 3 years late, double the budget. They just barely started clearing the right-of-way on the Surrey to Langley SkyTrain expansion, and they announced a 50% increase in costs, $2 billion. It is not an overstatement to say that the government's procurement model is deeply flawed and badly broken. And as a result, we're all paying a very, very heavy cost. And so in this election, as we go forward toward October 19th over the coming weeks, we'll be talking more about that, about the need to build more faster, to get to those decisions quicker, and to revisit the procurement model so that we can deliver it more effectively, more efficiently, and at better value for taxpayers. I'm now going to turn it over to Fiona Femulak, the president of the BC Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I'm Fiona Femulak, President and CEO of the BC Chamber of Commerce. Let me begin by sharing some concerning data points. 40% of British Columbians believe that business opportunities have deteriorated over the last 5 years, compared to only 14% that believe the opportunities have improved. 76% of British Columbians believe the provincial government should do more to lower the cost of doing business in BC. 64% of employers are more likely to relocate their business to another jurisdiction due to investment uncertainty. We have a sign on our provincial storefront that says to the world, British Columbia is closed for business. It's time to flip that sign. 61% of British Columbians understand that for government to deliver public services that they need, including healthcare, education, and to build the infrastructure that we all rely on, roads and bridges, there must be a strong economy and a healthy business community, an environment that supports job creation, attracts and retains investment, and generates the tax dollars to fund essential public services. Today, we are asking the parties running in this provincial election to share with British Columbians not just their vision for economic growth, but how they're going to create it and to reopen our province for business. British Columbians will determine the next BC government on October the 19th. It's therefore imperative that the parties are laser focused on economic growth and articulate their plans on how they will deliver that economic growth and investment stability such that our businesses prosper, British Columbians thrive, and our communities flourish. Thank you, and I'll now hand back to Bridget.
A big thank you to all of my colleagues here, and a number of other colleagues are in the room as well from across the business community. As you can see, a unique opportunity where we're all coming together with the same ask of all the parties. I am happy to open it up to questions. You can direct a question specifically to an individual, or we can have a more open forum and anybody can answer a question. So happy to hand it over to you.
One thing I thought was interesting was about the how long it takes to get a mine versus putting a man on the moon. Perhaps specifically, what's the challenge there? What needs to be tightened? And then to broaden it out, if because I think there was a World Bank study that showed Canada was low on the list of getting things done, even just a warehouse built. So if other people in their areas have specifics on how to be more efficient in permitting, what are some examples?
Well, I can speak to mining, and as I think you all know, you know, our federal minister responsible for mines, Minister Wilkinson, has said himself, you know, we can't take 15 years to permit a mine in Canada anymore. It's a challenge in British Columbia. It's due to many factors, and relates to the ministries. Overlap, it takes too much time, and it's too complex to currently to permit a mine due to overlap, differing ministries that claim, you know, the ministries themselves have different areas of concern. It needs to be streamlined. It needs to be much faster.
For Fiona, it has to do with that the leadership survey or questionnaire that you would send to the parties. Can either of you describe what you're hoping to get out of that? Might it lead to you know, more public endorsements in the future from leaders of different sectors? And you know, what will that info lead you to do?
This is a unique opportunity where you are hearing the business community come together with a call for an economic vision and an economic strategy for growth. We have all used data points here that show that we're on a concerning pathway and we need urgent action. So it's an opportunity for the parties that are running to show the business community and the voters at large that they have a plan to go forward. There are a lot of undecided voters right now, and so it is up to them to step up to the table to show us what their plan is. So the survey questions are on a range of topics that are focused on business growth, on investment, on innovation, on public safety and crime, on a number of issues that have been quite challenging in British Columbia over the past many years. And so we're hoping that the parties will take time to go through these questions to provide us those answers so that us and the business community and voters at large can make a good decision.
And I'll build on that. I mentioned in my comments that 61% of British Columbians understand the link between a healthy economy, a strong business community, and the government's ability to deliver public services that we all need. This questionnaire gives us the opportunity to seek the answers from the parties and help the parties tell the story to their voters about what their vision is, and more importantly, how they are going to deliver economic growth and investment certainty so that we can continue to enjoy the public services that we all need.
This question is for Bridget or Fiona or any of the officials that can address this. One aspect you haven't touched on is public safety. We had an issue just very recently with a very serious attack involving somebody with police that has had repeated interactions with police on the streets. I was wondering if you can comment on whether the survey includes any questions on public safety and the impact and what you're looking to get addressed on that front from the parties.
The Board of Trade and I think some of the other colleagues in the room are members of the Save Our Streets Coalition, which is a group of over 100 business and community groups who have come together calling for urgent action to address the public safety issues that we're seeing. Last week's tragic situation, I think, highlighted where we are at and the need for all levels of government to come together. We have included a question in the survey on this point. I think all of us would agree that public safety is an issue that impacts the entire community, whether it is businesses operating on the street in Vancouver, in Kamloops, in Nanaimo, in Prince George, or whether it impacts residents alike. It is an issue that is incredibly urgent that all three levels of government have to find some new solutions because simply what we're doing right now doesn't work.
Like the Vancouver Board of Trade, BC Chamber is also part of the SOS movement, and we hear from members across the province that crime, vandalism, and public safety are key issues, and it's not just social issues, they have a direct line back to business, which is why it's important for us to treat them as a business issue and to ask government, to urge government to give us solutions so that we can set up our businesses to succeed, so that they can then create jobs, which then means people can put food on the table, which means communities can thrive and flourish in future.
Hi, Anaïs Selbojdani from Radio-Canada. A number of you mentioned in the last 5 years, and we know the NDP government was there in the last 5 years, there was also a global pandemic and a global inflation. So how do you reconcile what is what belongs to the provincial government and what is out of their hands? Like how can you,
Sure. So I think our message today is really we're pointing to some symptoms of a serious problem. Many of them have persisted beyond where we would expect. Of course, we ran record-breaking deficits, for example, during the pandemic. But we are projecting record-breaking deficits going forward. So our focus really is forward-looking, and what are the different political leaders planning going forward to how are they going to address some of the serious challenges that we have. Of course, they're not all of the we're not suggesting, we're not looking backwards and casting anything on what happened. We're looking forward, and some of the symptoms we're seeing are carrying on into the future. And if you compare us to other provinces, that also sheds some insight into that we are not on the right path, because, of course, other provinces also had to deal with the pandemic.
Please.
Yeah, I just add to that, in the forest industry, certainly inflation, there's been a downturn in demand for housing across North America, so that's a big impact here. But I think the point that we're trying to make is that there are some levers that the provincial government has under its control that it can pull to address the current situation. 10,000 jobs lost in forest sector communities in the past year. We've seen another 500 Vanderhoof and Fort St. John this week. So there are things that can be done. They're not that complex. We don't think it's going to take some will, some political determination to make them happen.
Maybe one final point is that just 2 weeks ago, the parliamentary budget report came out and talking about what the sustainability is of our province's finances going forward comparative to other provinces in Canada. It is a dire situation. We are talking about billions of dollars that need to be cut or increased in taxes in order to ensure that we have a financially stable, sustainable province. So we are looking forward, as my colleague Laura mentioned, and asking for the parties to show us a vision.
Mira Baines with CBC. I had a question for anyone who's willing to answer it, and this is about Lululemon. The company's been under fire for hiring foreign workers without the usual requirement for first trying to hire Canadian residents, and you just mentioned jobs being lost in British Columbia. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on a company like Lululemon using its influence to try to hire foreign workers rather than people in Canada first?
We have an acute labor shortage in this province and have done for many, many years. And businesses are taking every step possible to hire the people that they need, temporary foreign workers and others. Canadians, we've learned from since COVID, have changed their work mode. Sometimes they work from home. Some of them have retired, some of them have gone traveling, et cetera, et cetera. So the pool to pull from is not as large as it was, and there are some serious concerns about our immigration system. So therefore, I don't think there should be judgment on Lululemon taking every step that it needs to take in order to have people in place to drive the business that they have, to then drive the taxes that we all pay, et cetera, et cetera. It's a step, it's indicative of the steps that our businesses are having to take in order to make working in British Columbia successful.
Is it that there's a more labor shortage, or is it that the companies don't want to pay people a livable wage to work? I don't think there's many people, I mean, unemployment right now is 6% or something like that. So obviously, people need work, so we don't have a labor shortage. What we have is people not getting a livable wage being paid.
I think it's both. I think it's not either or, it's both. We do have an acute labor shortage, if I think about, and Chris, you're able to speak to this more than I can, around the trades. We have a shortage of construction trades, for example, and many other types of trades associated with that. Those are essential to building the infrastructure that we need, and we don't have enough of them. So there is the wage conversation in there, of course, but we do not physically have the people in the province that we need right now to build the infrastructure that's in the pipeline. Do you want to elaborate on that?
A few comments on this issue because it's getting a lot of coverage recently. First of all, there's no company in Canada or British Columbia should be rewarded for breaking the law. They should be treating their employees appropriately, giving them the wages and benefits and all the other things that good employers need to do to develop a healthy workforce. The challenge is this. We are adding a city the size of Calgary to Canada every single year. 1.3 million people came to Canada last year. Most of those people are international students and temporary foreign workers. And temporary foreign workers should not be used as a way, as an incentive for companies not to invest in training, not to invest in innovation, not to invest in technology. And that is a challenge. We aren't bringing in the skilled workers that we need. We're bringing a whole bunch of folks who are unskilled. And so what governments need to do, what the federal government needs to do is to start tamping back on the floodgates that they've opened. Both the province and the federal government need to provide more incentives for employers to train people. We've got to provide more spaces for training. If you want to get a Red Seal designation in British Columbia, it's a 4-year program. It'll take 6, 8, maybe 10 years because of the wait list. We're not investing in training spaces. We've got to be more innovative in how we deliver that curriculum. So we've got to make those investments in people and training and innovation, and not be looking to open the floodgates to immigration to solve a problem that immigration, frankly, is not going to solve.
okay for next question? Hi, Jen St. Dennis from the Tyee. So John Rustad in his speeches has been talking a lot about forestry and mining and talking about speeding up mining permits. But he's also made some comments that show that he has pretty strong skepticism, even maybe denial of accepted climate change science, and climate change is a business issue as well. I'm just curious how you kind of square those two, those two things that you're hearing in his comments.
I think there's a lot of voters who are undecided right now within the business community and public at large. And I think this is an opportunity for all of the parties to look at their platforms and to appeal to the voters. So it's an opportunity for them to step up, whether we're talking about economic policies, you've mentioned social policies. So this is a unique opportunity, and elections matter, campaigns matter, and this campaign will matter more than anything. So our message to all the parties is to hear our urge to focus on the economy, to ensure that there is a thriving, prosperous economy for all, and to show us what that vision and that strategy is.
Our poll that we issued just a couple of weeks ago shows that 50% of the respondents to that poll support natural resources to create economic growth, compared to those against, which I think was 27%. Again, 50% were in support of natural gas, because it emits less greenhouse gases than other forms. So there is support in the voter landscape for leveraging natural resources as a source of economic growth. It's not either or, it's both. And if we are able to unleash the natural resource sector, as Michael has mentioned, and let them do what they do, create the product, drive job creation, fire up the supply chain and the communities associated, that is economic growth coming from natural resources that need to be set up to succeed going forward.
And I would just say that on our survey that we're putting to all of the leaders, there are questions very relevant to the question you're asking. And so there's question 4 on climate and energy policy and question 5 on resource development. And our attention, again, is to get this information to our members, to the general public, so that people can make informed decisions.
I have a follow-up question. We've also seen, sorry, Linda, go ahead.
Can I just?
Yes.
Okay. Got to say something about climate change and forest here. Got to get that in. So I think one of the issues in BC climate and energy policy to date has been, a singular focus on GHG reductions. Fair enough. That's the international baseline that everybody tracks. But there's a new kid on the block in British Columbia, Alberta, Western Canada, the Western U.S., and that's wildfire. And that's going to have an impact on people's perceptions regarding climate change and what we can do about it here in the Pacific Northwest. So I think watch for that debate to evolve in the election too.
I have a follow. We've also seen, a lot of comments on social media recently pop up, people drawing attention to certain candidates or certain members of the Conservative Party, making comments, making fun of the ideas of like white nationalism, expressing interest in some alt-right figures. Is this a concern at all for the business community?
Well, as I said, there is a large amount of voters who are undecided right now. And so more than ever, this is going to be a campaign where all the parties have an opportunity to step up to provide what their vision for the British Columbia that they want to see. And so our urging to the parties is to take this very seriously and to know that campaigns matter and that we are calling on them. The economic vision is part of the fabric of any community, but in hand, there are issues around public safety. There's issues, all kinds of social issues, mental health and addiction. We are on a concerning path here in British Columbia. And so with an election in front of us, all the party leaders have a responsibility to show us what their plan is so that we can have a thriving community.
Hi, Derek Penner with the Vancouver Sun and Province. To build on a previous question, there are challenges that are beyond the government's control, whether it's inflation or interest rates, or governments can't make developers build housing if the conditions aren't right. What are the specific asks that any of the parties could answer for you?
I think probably all of us have got some specific asks. From our perspective at the Board of Trade, we produced a report probably 18 months ago now that showed that government-imposed costs by the government of British Columbia, $6.5 billion over a 2-year period. And within that, we looked at carbon tax, we looked at the employer health tax, which there has been a slight adjustment to that. There are a number of levers available to government, provincial government, to address some of the challenges in the business community that would have meaningful impact on small and medium businesses particularly. So with the survey answers will help to provide some of the points in which they might be able to put into their platform. It is early on because the platforms have not been released yet and we're waiting for that information. But I would say that all of us, and you're welcome to speak to any of us individually after as well, would have a number of ideas that we've been speaking to government and opposition about for many months that could be taken that would result in some meaningful change.
When it comes to small businesses, we've published our small business election platform a couple of weeks ago, and in there's a whole laundry list of recommendations for the province. For example, lowering provincial payroll costs. BC has the second highest provincial payroll costs in the country. Employer mandatory paid sick days, one of the lowest employer health tax exemption threshold. So basically any policies that can reduce the cost of doing business, provide financial relief for small businesses and restore confidence that BC is open for business are some of the policies that the business community is looking for.
Does Michael or Linda have?
I'd be happy to. The speed of permitting lays with the regulator, and we've made recommendations consistently to both the province and the Government of Canada over the last few years. We call this our kind of Permit to Prosperity initiative. There's a number of points in it. First, with critical minerals, we're recommending to both levels of government that they identify and prioritize projects of what we call regional significance. Two, we're suggesting that both the feds and the province come together with relevant First Nations around a project table, and that they move and as they permit that project, that table moves and supports the permitting process. Three, we're calling on both the feds and the province to coordinate, to have more intra-government cooperation and ensure it's one project, one process. Last and important is we strongly recommend to both levels of government that they speed up and begin to support and build capacity with First Nations, to enable the nations to participate in a greater way in new critical mineral projects, to give them the administrative, governance, and technical capacity. Thanks.
Derek, one more. So yes, we've been talking to government and forestry about all parties, about setting a target for available harvests on a more predictable basis. It wouldn't necessarily be the annual allowable cut, because that depends on markets, but at least to embrace a target for how much would we, think should be available for harvest every year in BC. We think that would create more stability, more incentive for investment, and sort of flatten things out in the sector right now instead of continuing the current decline. But as I said earlier, that takes some commitment. But we set targets for lots of things. We have targets for GHG reduction. We have targets for biodiversity conservation. We have targets for doctors. We have targets for safety. Why not have a target for an available harvest?
So the main point of this group coming together today is to hear the party leaders and that we're aligned that a strong economy is important. Without a strong economy, we have fewer resources for healthcare. Without a strong economy, we don't have as many of the high-paying jobs that makes things feel more affordable at the grocery store. So that's the key message. As you've heard, each one of our association has ideas that we can put forward as leaders might think about how they answer those questions. And we did a conference in June, and the title of the conference was Bold Ideas for a Brighter Future. And so we have a number of ideas in here. Many of them speak to some of what you've heard from my colleagues in the business community, but one of the top line ideas was around economic growth and really the need to put policies and put what we're doing through a growth lens. Again, without a strong economy, it's the foundation on which all of the things we care about rest. So without a strong economy, we have some very serious challenges, and that's the key message today.
Hi, it's Kier Junos from City News again. You guys have made it very clear that many voters are undecided about the way they're going to go this election. But, I'd wager that you guys aren't just any voters, right? You're privy to conversations with senior people in government. I mean, you're sharing ideas with them, and you're now asking for them in a categorical way on on where they stand on certain things, how they might be able to, I guess, benefit your industries, the economy in general. Because you're privy to those conversations, right? Are any of you willing to, I guess, share what things are you convinced by right now from either government, the BC NDP, or the Conservatives about how they might benefit the economy, your business? Are any of you willing to?
You say benefit the economy or benefit business associations or the business community. I think you're hearing loud and clear that any benefit to the economy is benefit to all of us, that we need a strong economy to support healthcare, to support infrastructure, to support daycare, to support a thriving community overall. We have yet to see the platforms from the parties. So like many of you, we've got a lot of questions about where they stand on certain issues. And that is the reason that we came together, really to stand together as one voice, to ask them to answer these questions around the priorities that we see are needed to be addressed.
It's easy to point out already, and you have some of the things that aren't working with the present approach. So if there are things that aren't working, what is?
I'll answer that in the reverse. I'll tell you what's not working. Because the British Columbians have told us loudly and clearly that they understand the link between a strong economy and the government's ability to pay for services that they need. They've told us clearly, and my colleagues have mentioned it today, the underlying conditions to set businesses up to succeed, such as the cost of doing business being too high and the regulatory system being too complex and such that it creates uncertainty, is getting in the way. So therefore, we're calling on governments, the government and also the others that are running in this election, to articulate really clearly not just what their vision is for economic growth, but how they are going to deliver that economic growth. What levers are they going to pull? Based on what we know, cost of doing business is too high. So therefore, what are they going to do to take the cost of doing business down? We know that the regulatory system is too confusing and complex, and we can see by the polling numbers, 64% of businesses are actively looking at leaving this province to go to other jurisdictions. So what is the party of the day going to do to reverse that trend? So there's many things that can be addressed, given what's not being addressed right now. And it's our role as business associations to keep the government of the day's feet to the fire, leading into the election and also post-election, to make sure that we're setting up the environment such that businesses can succeed, create jobs, put food on the table for their employees, and create healthy communities.
I just have one tiny question, maybe for Bridget. But I've been speaking with a fellow who left a green energy company startup. He was concerned that that company was receiving federal grants to create green energy infrastructure, and that they were still outsourcing jobs, like whole entire teams out to London, UK, or something like that. Do you share those concerns at all?
I can't speak to that specific example because I don't have the details of it, but if you look back at our benchmarking report that we released in May, we clearly have a strong brand. Our reputation in Greater Vancouver is good, but the underpinnings are weak, and one of those is that, and we've seen this for decades in British Columbia, this isn't new, that we see a brain drain. So we talked about the labor shortage, we've talked about, how to create the conditions so that people can live and work here, and there is a very tight correlation to housing as well. You have to have affordable housing to be able to attract and retain the talent that you need. So we do share concerns overall about that, but I can't speak to specifics. I'd be happy to talk to you after to get more information if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Just in terms of what's working in forestry, the BC Jobs and Manufacturing Fund, more equity agreements and investments with First Nations. Those are working.
One thing I haven't heard at all is are the words balanced budget. How important is that? Are you urging government to get its spending under control?
I think prior to the last number of years, BC's had a long tradition, actually, of having balanced budgets or very small deficits. COVID was an understandable large deficit for governments right across Canada. Our concern is that the deficits are what we would call structural deficits, which means they're kind of baked in. And so what we need to get out of that situation is, again, comes back to our message of a strong economy, is the best way to get out of that situation is to stimulate economic growth and to have higher growth levels. The painful way to get out is to have to start cutting, but we do know that today's deficits are tomorrow's taxes, and it's important to pay attention when you're in a situation where you've got record-breaking deficits. We've had several credit downgrades. That makes borrowing more expensive. That leaves less available in current operating budgets. So these are issues that are, there's no question, they're very, very challenging to wrangle with. But what we're looking for all the leaders to do and to communicate is to have a plan that's better than just a sea of red ink going forward. So that's what we're looking for in the platforms.
And maybe one final comment as we bring this to a close, that the timing of this is, if your question is quite perfect, because I believe this afternoon we're going to get a financial update from the government. And our projected deficit right now is sitting at $7.9 billion with projected deficits for the next 2 years as well. So, we'll have more information this afternoon, but when you couple that with the comments from Lauren, you look at the the parliamentary budget report that talked about the unsustainability of British Columbia's finances, we're clearly seeing there is a lot of concern about the path that we're on, and we're clearly calling on governments, for government, who is ever going to be the government of the day, to address this.
Is there any chance of the debt clock coming back?
That's a good question. It was a very useful tool, and we were very excited when we got to retire that. It might be time to bring it back. Thank you for coming, everybody.